Hello and welcome back, and that is right. Today I want to continue talking about Reolink IP cameras. I talk about cameras, I would say, probably on average once every couple of weeks here on the channel. It's by no means a subject that I properly throw myself into like I do NAS or SSDs or like switches and routers. But there's no denying it. I do talk about cameras quite a lot. And the reason is that a lot of the devices that we buy for our home, particularly smart devices, are more and more increasingly supporting surveillance technology. The idea of having cameras in our homes, unfortunately, is actually quite pedestrian these days. Most of us have a little device in the corner of the house that goes, "Hello, I'm totally listening to you, but don't worry, we're safe." We all have devices like that, but at the same time, there is surveillance that can be under your pure control. Devices that are all within your own network, and devices like this. Cameras that you have on the outside of your home, at the front, at the back, the garage, the pool, the garden if you're very rich, and you've got all of these devices to protect the things that are the most dearest to you, be it your wife and children, or husband, or alternatively your Batman figures. I think you probably know which way I'm going on that. Now, of all the camera brands that I talk about here on the channel, the one that gets the most coverage, let's be honest, is Reolink. Notwithstanding that they do send their latest devices here to be tested with different network attached Droid devices for surveillance station, QVR Pro, surveillance center, and more. But on top of that, because I genuinely like them, I use their cameras in my home. The first camera I ever used, I bought from them. I made a video for it, and then they got in contact. That's how they are here on the channel. However, I don't think I could actually say I've ever been excited by their products. I'm just not. They're cameras, for God's sake. They sit there, they do their job, they record 24/7, and out of every 100 hours, I'll be surprised if I watch 5 minutes of those recordings. You only ever look at a camera when there's an alert, really, or when you've got something to be concerned with. However, this thing, the Reolink Duo 2, this Wi-Fi model, which has literally just been released, is a camera that genuinely interests me, because IP cameras have been a bit same old for a long time. You've got your domes, you've got your bullet cameras, you've got the ones that sit there as baby monitors. But this is the first time I've seen true innovation. This is a camera that has got 2 lenses built in and creates a wider area of coverage. Reolink say that this camera can cover up to 180 degrees of visibility there, which is incredibly rare. Yes, you could get a dome and then PTZ that bad boy to move around on areas of focus, but this allows you to have a camera outside of your home that views the entire scope of view from side to side. Just disconnecting my laptop there in the background because the fan's getting annoying. So inside we've got the retail packaging here. It's fairly standard Reolink design there, and again there is a PoE, power over Ethernet version of this. Also, this camera is Wi-Fi assisted, Wi-Fi connected, utilizing both the 2.4 gigahertz band and the 5 gigahertz band there, which is really important, which is something I'll touch on later on. If we open it up, we've got the usual prepare for Reolink thing there on the front. We can have a little look inside. That is your information pack, and inside there is your first time setup manual, information on the 2 years of warranty, and a sticker that you can put outside your home that basically says you're being watched, get off my land. And again, up to you if you want to use it. Bit aggressive, but okay. Also inside we have got our antenna that you can attach if you choose to, because remember this does have apparently an Ethernet connection. This is the first time I'm opening this. Now, I mentioned earlier on about support of 2.5 and 5 gigahertz there. The reason that's important to discuss is simply that whether you're utilizing a standard Wi-Fi system or using sub-networks within that system with multiple SSIDs, or you're using a mesh router system that's got multiple mesh points, you may have separate networks running on 2.4 gigahertz. You might have one 5 gigahertz internet or network band and one 2.4 gigahertz. You may be using a dual band or smart connectivity that hops devices as they get further away from the stronger 5 gigahertz band and pops them onto 2.4. But there are a small contingent of users that take their network connections quite seriously, that actually divvy up the network connections. And if you're using a mesh system, depending on the distance you're putting your mesh points, they may automatically fall into 2.4 gigahertz or have 5 available. And luckily, this camera supports both. Consequently, you're not going to have camera connection blind spots. So this having support of both of those is very, very important. These are also quite high quality antennas with a good locking mechanic. You can just hear that lock. It's quite a good set of there. If we remove those out, we've got our top layer of packaging. Very well presented inside there. We've got screws and raw plugs for attaching the device outside of your home. It's IP66 weatherproof inside this. So again, dust, moisture. Obviously, it's not IP67, so you can't plunge it into a bucket of water, which would be weird. And it's not fireproof, but again, wind, dust, moisture, frost, you've got yourself covered here. Now, we have an external power there, which again, if you're using this on Wi-Fi, you are going to have to make sure you've got a power point there. This is quite a power-hungry camera, so I'm not convinced you're going to be able to use a solar panel to operate this, and bear in mind that solar panel is going to need to have a battery pack. We have a Cat6 Ethernet cable there, good for PoE, but we also have the extension cable there. So this is an extension that allows you to connect to your external power, and then from there run this cable significantly further away, which is very, very beneficial. And finally, if we remove it out there, we also have a bloody great big screwdriver, and we have the camera. Let's slide that out. We will be doing a software test later in this video, but for now what we can do is slide out our massive camera. We've also got things to cover the connector there on the rear there. And finally, if we slide that out, we've got the base of where our camera lives. You've got the metal plate that works between the base and the wall, and that's really it for our accessories there. If we pop all of this there on the side, we remove that from the bag, and as you can see, the base is optional, it's not pre-attached. And finally, there is our camera. It's designed, of course, to live like so. Just remove that up from there, screw it in, put that in for the first time. Could have done this a lot more professionally, but yay, here we are. Normally you would have used that Allen key that it's included with. Pop that in there, and boom, there you go. You've got your camera. And again, I know it looks a bit Johnny 5, okay? But on the bottom there, you've got an Ethernet cable there to connect it if you don't want to go wireless and you want to go wired. Again, the PoE version of this will be a PoE connector, but you've also got the power connector there for connecting that cable for power that we mentioned. Now the antennas attach here on the side, and connection with this device is done with a simple barcode system. And again, strongly recommend that you connect it for the first time with an Ethernet cable, and then it can establish a relationship and you can save your Wi-Fi credentials for this device to its memory, so you can get it to scan for an SSID and then automatically add that via the Ethernet connection. Trying to add this for the first time with just Wi-Fi will be a little tougher there, but there we go, we've got our antennas connected, and as you can see there on the front, it is the idea of having those two lenses there, and there in the middle, if we remove the blue, you've got the light sensor there in the bottom, in the middle, for sensing night vision. Now, this has got human detection, it's got vehicle detection, it's got pet detection. More importantly, particularly when it comes to the human detection, it has recognition to a point where it knows who to not alert for. It's a smart alert system where if an intruder is there who is not on the known database, it will auto alarm if you set it up. Of course, if you do funnel this through a smart home system, some of those features are going to be controlled by your Google Assistant that you've got knocking around. And it has to be highlighted once again, there are practically no cameras that I know of, particularly at this price point, but moreover commercially available, that allow you to have a 180-degree line. Now, I mentioned earlier on it's the Duo 2. The Duo does exist, and it has a 150-degree angle of coverage, but it also has a line just down the middle. This has got much better mesh blending apparently to cover that middle bit. There's an overlap thanks to the lens, and then it covers them both over to create that middle division, therefore having a much more seamless 180 coverage, something we're going to test later on in the video. It also supports 4K. The previous version only supported 2K, so again, incredible high fidelity and an enormous range of coverage. Now, it doesn't have support of PTZ, pan tilt zoom, but the idea is that this shouldn't need to, because it's got that half a circle's worth of coverage there overall. In terms of recording patterns, recordings are in H.264, which means you're not going to have to worry about auto conversions and some software and some surveillance software forcing conversions of H.265 or HEVC recordings. In terms of the Nightvision, it covers 30 meters, but it also has Reolink's color Nightvision built in as well. So you're not just dealing with, forgive me, shades of grey. You have got realistic understanding of colours and will hyper them, the colours up there, and make them a great deal more vibrant overall in terms of what the software can do. Let's bring this closer for the thumbnail. Thanks for bearing with me. And we can talk a little bit about the hardware inside this. Now, we have a little slot on the base there that you can pop open, and inside there is our SD card slot. This supports a 256 megabyte SSD controller in SD card inside for your live recordings. There's also support of Reolink's own cloud service there. I went through the specifications and I couldn't see if this camera supported OnVIF, O-N-V-I-F. So when I do the software half of this video, I will check whether this is visible by a Synology NAS, and I'll add that onto the end of this video. So although I can't tell you that now, by the end of this video, I will have an answer whether this is NAS supported. There's also audio in and out. So if there is an intrusion happening, you can hear it happening, but you can also say and shout, "Get out of my house, stay away from my Batman figures." I meant to my wife and kids. That Ethernet connection is 1 GBE, which is a little bit of a shame. I thought we were slowly edging towards 2.5 gigabit Ethernet cameras soon, given the high fidelity we're talking about these days. If you're recording remotely to something, particularly for users that are using greater than gigabit internet connectivity, and when you utilize Reolink's own surveillance cloud platform, the pricing is weirdly competitive, it has to be said. So they've got 3 tiers. At the moment, it's all on offer, but you know, you might be watching this in the future and it's off. But if you're going for their cloud services right now, there is a free tier that allows you to have, reading from my notes, 1 camera running and 7 days of recording retention policy there. But again, it's only the alerts, not live 24/7 recording, but just the alert, and that's the free tier, so you get that regardless. If you go for the next tier up, at the moment it's a 3 Nika 50, and that gives you more camera support. I think it's up to 5 and a longer retention period. And then the one at the top is £6.89 or something, and that's about 30% off. Again, I'm doing most of this from memory and not from my notes, and that gave you far more days, far more cameras, better recording policies, not just alerts. So again, you are putting the money down at the beginning, which I'll touch on in a moment, but you are still getting that surveillance kind of cloud storage using your internet connection, which you can access via the mobile app that I'll be showing you later on. Now, I've said a lot of things I like about this camera, I really have, but I've got to say there are things about it I'm not completely in love with. Things I don't like. First and foremost, the power consumption. It seems to be a bit of a greedy gut, and yes, it's got the 2 cameras, of course it's going to need to, but for a non-PoE camera, the power consumption was a little higher than I would have liked. And again, if you're running it off the mains, that's fine, but I liked the idea of a PoE camera that I could have connected easily, and this camera, as good as it is, when you've got it running 24/7, and particularly if you're running from a solar panel, it's not really going to work. So you're kind of forced to use mains power, which for an external camera is a real shame. Another thing I'm not completely in love with, and again, this is a relative concern, is the price tag. At the moment, it's going to knock around for between $149 and $150. The launch price is about $149 to $159, which is great, but once it goes onto other sites, that price the margin outside of Amazon gets a little bit higher, and their own website as well. Now, why is that a concern? Because for an external Wi-Fi camera, you can normally pick those up like this for about 100, 110. And yes, some might argue you're getting 2 cameras. But for an external camera with the specifications it has, it seems about 10 or 20% too expensive. Yes, you are paying for the unique quality of that 180-degree coverage, which is good. But at the same time, if you're only going to be utilizing it for an external camera and you don't need 180 degrees of coverage, there are cheaper cameras out there from Reolink that cover 4K, that cover human vehicle and pet detection, that have 4K support onto an SD card that supports 250 gig of a card and dual frequency coverage there. You are paying extra for something that, if you're not going to use that area of coverage, is going to be a gimmick to you. But that's enough ragging. Let's get this set up with the app and run a few little tests with that camera. Okay, so here we are on the desktop of my phone here, and in the top right icon there, you can see just underneath my cat's eye there is the Reolink app. So if we load into that, I've already logged in and we're able to look at the different cameras that I've connected to this app for this demonstration. Now again, we are only looking at the camera at the bottom there, the Reolink Duo. Now, we've got all of these other cameras being fed in, and I wanted to include those just to give you a basis of comparison, because I don't think you can really appreciate the scope of the Duo 2 in terms of its range unless you properly compare it against a traditional one lens camera. Now, to put that into perspective, I don't know why I'm rotating that there because it's not really going to work on this screen, but as you can see there at the top, if we have a little look and bring it to the top of the fold there, and what I'm going to do is stand up, I'll be slightly away from the mic and just walk back and forth to give you some idea. This is the overhead view, or at least head height view of my office above the desks. Now, as I moved slowly between the middle, you probably saw the slight dividing line there between each of the 2 lenses. You've got to kind of see it as you move along, but if I move towards the middle, you'll be able to see my image go ever so slightly warped in the middle. Even then, you really have to kind of see it just there where my head is to really make out that difference. And again, this is on that 180 degree coverage there. I'm sorry about stepping away from the mic. Now, you can increase the fluidity all the way up to 4K there if you choose for an incredibly sharp image. And as mentioned, you can rotate the camera, but again, what you see on screen will now be completely different to what I'm seeing there. Just take my word for it that that is going to be great if you were looking at it from your own camera view. Now, you can, if you choose to, take a very quick snapshot if you choose, and that will save it locally to your device. Equally, you can enable audio in and out if you choose to from your mobile, as well as talk directly out of the camera. Now, at the top right, you can see a few different options there. If there have been alerts, you can go ahead and trigger the audio alarm on this, something I'm not going to do because it will cause tremendous feedback loop onto the microphone. On top of that, if the camera does have a built-in light sense, which this does, you can increase that. So now you can just about make out on the bottom left of the camera feed there, that light reflecting there. And I'll just turn it off there in the background just to show you that that light is pretty darn bright there all the way between all of them. If I enable that light now and just step up into its field of view, you're able to see there that it's pretty darn clear. In fact, why don't I turn the lights off in the office to give you some idea about the clarity there. Now again, the positioning of this isn't fantastic, but the fact of the matter is you can still make out pretty much everything in that office environment, and you can pinch and zoom within that field if you choose to. And if I lean back, there I am. So again, zooming out there, there's lots of things we can do. So the top right there, if we want to go for a different grid shot and we have multiple cameras, we can go ahead and feed them all into there, or feed in different frame rated or different streams from that individual camera if we so choose. I've got a big blob of light in my line of sight there. So again, switching to night and day cycle will allow you to switch into that coloured night mode if you choose to, and that means even at night time it will be able to intelligently predict some of those lighting effects that are being utilised there. The same goes if you want to go straight into the auto select system for it itself, and again, picture in picture will allow you to monitor the camera from the desktop of your mobile phone with ease, simply needing you to open up the app once again to go back into it. On top of that, you can go ahead with the immersive mode that will then span all of the cameras simultaneously, all being fed into your camera. So right now, if I rotate around the room, you're able to make out each of the individual cameras that I've enabled in this workspace. The only one that's taking slightly longer is the pan tilt zoom camera I have domed just underneath the top camera. The reason that one's not running through is that particular switch it's running on is quite busy. But what's interesting, when we go into it there, as you can see, if we compare that, these two cameras are very, very close to each other. You can tell from the background of what in shot there, such as the Acer Store logo or some of the logos they have for some of the brands at the back of the studio. Look at the field of view difference between them there. These two cameras are around about a foot apart in terms of their location within my office space, and the just sheer scale of range of view, that's the pan tilt zoom camera that's underneath our Duo 2 Wi-Fi there. And look at the coverage area there when we compare these two side by side. Just tremendous difference in the sheer degrees of coverage there between the two of them, thanks to those two lenses and the mesh across the middle. The same goes for these two cameras here that are dotted next to me. If we go back in to that native view that we looked at earlier on in the immersive view, this will give you some idea about how much coverage there is. If I walk around this room, I'm sorry to keep stepping away from the mic, in order to show you the areas of coverage here between them. If I move along between the different areas, carrying on. Another interesting thing that's worth touching on there is the bottom two cameras, one of which is using traditional night sight, that's the pan tilt zoom camera, and the bottom camera that is using coloured night sight there, just like the other two cameras have got coloured night sight enabled. Coloured night sight makes all of the difference. It allows you to have a much more vibrant picture when you're in areas of darkness, but more importantly, it allows you to be able to differentiate things a great deal better compared with that of traditional night sight and its two colour spectrum, and also its fragmented, more blurry, noisy images that are presented on screen there. Now, the settings that you can change on an individual camera are actually pretty diverse. If you choose to, you can save individual Wi-Fi points that are in your local area to the camera. So if you attach it for the first time as a wired connection, you can give it the credentials to a Wi-Fi connection if you want to move the camera down the line. You'd even get it to save Wi-Fi networks that are not actually immediately available, and kind of bolster the available range of cameras. With regards to the display, you can change a number of the individual settings. You can go ahead and add a watermark if you choose for the time, date, or a logo if you choose. The default quality if you want to go into that you can set individually, change the brightness. You can even apply a privacy mask that will allow you to decide certain things, such as this area here. I could go ahead and create a privacy mask, and from that point that area won't be recorded and it will always exist within that area. And again, we can remove that privacy mask nice and easily at the touch of a button. Again, from there, there's lots of advanced options that are a little bit more enabled to the camera, and the image stitching, you can change that. So if you opt to, you can alter it so the two cameras and the two lenses are actually working in different fields rather than trying to stitch them together at all. And the color switching threshold, depending on your own personal setup there and the level of darkness or light that you have in a low light area, can be adjusted quite easily within the application. Same goes for brightness and shadows too, allowing you to enable intelligent understanding of the edges of things within a light to lower accidental alerts. Now, the detection alarm, you can change its area of sensitivity, object size, what it's analysing and who. You can also enable some of the different detection areas to be very specific. So in my case, I might want to make it so that that door there is, let's erase that because that's hideous, erase all. If we choose to, we can go ahead and paint it so that this area here, I don't want alerts about. But if someone breaks into the window at the top left, I can have that enabled. From there, you can go ahead into pet detection, which is in beta at the moment, but it does allow you to go ahead and enable alert. So if a pet walks in front of a camera, it understands that this is a small animal and not trigger an alert. Something that, although in this office space isn't going to be tremendously useful, on a lens like this one that's being spanned out of a local window, we can see that if down here there was a cat walking through a cat flap, this wouldn't trigger our alarm. Going back into the duo camera there, going back into the settings, with all of this happening very, very response led, we can go ahead and choose recording settings. Now bear in mind, you can record to a local SSD or record on ONVIF, or more importantly, or more advisedly by Reolink, you can use their own cloud recording services, something you can find out more on their website. On top of that, you can change a lot of the individual settings that allow you to change how things are recorded, formats that are recorded in, and more. All of which very, very customizable, all from the ground up. You can even share this camera feed with another user if you choose to, very, very easily. It's a great little camera with loads and loads of settings built in, and all of this on top of that great scope of recording thanks to those two lenses there. And again, network identity are more easy to differentiate and then add the cameras to a network attached storage device. What I'm saying is this might be one of my favorite cameras that Reolink have ever produced, and it's one that even without its arguably gimmickal approach to the two cameras there, which I do incidentally love, it's nice that it still has all of those hallmarks of a good Reolink camera, and certainly one I recommend. And again, checking out their cloud storage, that's up to you. I will personally always recommend a NAS for an NVR, but I do know a lot of users that use their cloud connected surveillance services as well. You can even use both, give yourself a bit of edge recording there. All of which can be registered from within the application, as well as creating your own surveillance pattern very, very easily. There you go at the bottom there. They've even popped an advert there for the camera for you to check it out. But apart from that, this has been my review of the Duo 2 Wi-Fi camera. Certainly one of the best cameras I've seen Reolink put out for a long time, and definitely something of probably an indication of where the company is going with a lot of their hardware innovation. There'll hopefully be a written review over on NAS Compares linked in the description. You can learn out more about it, as well as links to the product itself below as well. Click like if you've enjoyed the video, subscribe to learn more, and visit the articles in the description to the best cameras right now for your network attached storage or NVR setup. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.